Hey, deserving listeners, Natalia Grace documentary. Let's watch.
Natalia had been trying to pull Christine into the electric fence. She'd been screaming out loud.
I was there with the officer. I don't remember any of that being said. I don't remember there being any threats about I'm going to kill you or anything like that. I just felt like the situation had kind of been overblown and was not really that big of a deal.
Okay, so we have a worker at the farm or the park or the facility in which earlier we were hearing from Michael that Natalia was trying to electrocute Christine, and that's when the police are called, and that's when Natalia went into the mental health hospital. So I'm guessing, is this documentary just basically a bunch of accounts that are edited in a way to keep us flip-flopping between the Barnetts being evil or Natalia being evil or everyone's evil or something? Because they're laying out the data in a way that is, I think, a result of that. And so I have a lot more of this to watch, and I'm guessing that it's going to continue to do that. But, I guess that's effective documentarianship. But for me, when I present things, it's like, just give the data and don't play around with this. But anyway, so we're hearing from one of the workers that, according to his account, the story is not true, that in fact, it was Christine that was being abusive to Natalia, or at the very least, Natalia wasn't being violent or threatening or anything like that.
Way back up there, Natalia's already gone. The officer with her is already gone. I don't speak to the officers, I speak to my wife.
We keep going, we get about 40, 50 yards down, and I start hearing screaming.
Okay, so they're catching him on an inconsistency. The temptation is to think that it's a volitional lie, but this happens when you study eyewitness accounts and people's memories. People will be very confident. That's kind of the problem, is that it's not that people misremember, it's how confident they are in their mismemory. So it could be just an involuntary thing, one thing that could have happened. And this is just on his side. This is giving him charity right now. This is giving him the benefit of the doubt. Of course, just on the onset, I'll just say there's a possibility that he's completely lying, is lying about everything. I have been wondering about that. I don't have any big reason to believe he's been lying about everything, but you just wonder, and he does have motivation to paint himself in a positive light, at least for the documentary. But so there is that possibility. He's completely lying, and he's been chronically lying about everything. It is possible. On the other side, it's possible that he, if we were there and we could see a recording of it or something, that he arrived on the scene at the very tail end of things and didn't see much. Then later he hears a description from his wife, and since he's partial to his wife, he believes her, especially given his own experience, maybe, who knows. And then over time, he hears the story enough that he starts to believe he was there. And then when he's asked about it, he tells the story as if he was there. Then later on, when he's asked the question again, he's had time to think, or he knows that there's some question marks here. Maybe he is less partial to his wife or ex-wife, and he starts to reevaluate that. He's like, well, actually, I don't know if I was actually there. In fact, no, I actually wasn't there. That happened in an audio episode that I may or may not have already published, in which I interviewed my dad on the podcast, the audio podcast. It was when I was talking about this moment in which I was bullied by this kid, this bigger kid, on the way home from school. I walked to and from school, and this bigger kid, 4 or 5 years older than me, just for whatever reason decided he was going to bully me the entire walk home. It was a mile walk, and he just decided he was going to hit me and abuse me and put me down, and he just slowly, because I had to walk home, and I'm, 7 years old or something. And for whatever reason, my friends weren't there. I don't know. But he just walked with me all the way home. I might have even been younger. I might have even been like in kindergarten or something. But he just walked with me. It was the 70s. It was a different time. Everyone walked to school by themselves. And so he just walked with me and abused me the whole time. He didn't abuse me and leave. And so I just was walking in this, trying the whole time, just saying okay, I just got to get home. And I'm small. I can't run away from him. And then I told my parents about it. And then they went, so in my head, me and my dad went over to the house and confronted the family. And I had some details about that wrong. My dad said I wasn't there. So it's more likely that I wasn't there, because it wouldn't be something that my dad would bring me along for, right? It's like, he's heard my story. I've had enough drama for the day. He's going to walk to the neighbor's house. And then my dad told me the story, maybe not directly after, but maybe years later even. And I constructed in my head a story that I was there. And so it's possible that he just had one of those. Who knows? But it's also possible that he's just a chronic liar. We haven't heard anything about his history or his issues. You know, some people who are on a mission to save the world in a good way, and part of that mission involves adopting kids in need in a good way, they sometimes have very difficult pasts and similar pasts to the kids they're adopting. And those pasts can result in a lot of issues, a lot of fears, defenses, patterns, habits, modeled behavior that can result in maybe lying that isn't good. It's not an excuse, but I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
She helped me up. Like, literally, like, I was down and I reached up and she helped me up. And then she fell and it was kind of close. So, like, I was trying to get up and she fell and I fell. And then I guess she thought I was trying to put her into the electric fence or whatever, because, you know, they said don't go by that.
Okay, we're in an interview that occurs 7 years after the incident, I think, if I'm looking at my timeline right, or at least a number of years, because it's 2019, with a forensic psychologist or a forensic evaluator of some sort, I forget. And she's giving her account of that story at the creamery, the farm with the electric fence. We're hearing from Natalia the story, and she's saying that her feet were hurting and that it was just an accident and the mom fell, and then the mom apparently just made up that Natalia was trying to kill her by pushing her into the fence.
What age, but she has not grown in 4 years. So the judge came up with his own little formula. Well, you stop growing at 18. If she hasn't grown in 4 years, then she's at least 18 when she entered their lives, and I'm going to add 4 years. He said, okay, I find you 22.
My God. I mean, if this legal expert seems to not be associated with either side or any side. I think it's just an expert that the documentarians hired so we can maybe trust this person's account a little better than others. I don't know. But she's saying that in court, the judge, without any justification, just came up with the judge came up with his own equation saying that, well, you stop growing at 18. I don't think that's a firm scientific fact. And let's add 4 years because according to you, she stopped growing 4 years ago. And let's just say she's 22. Wow. Now, there's a medical issue here as well that would result in growth being different. Now, maybe the judge knew that and took that into, I don't know, it doesn't sound like it. So I grew up thinking that judges and police officers and teachers and therapists were all intelligent and wise and fair and right, at least most of the time. I have been disabused of that lie throughout my life, judges included. Most judges are fine, but they're human beings. So you're going to have a bell curve regardless. And I have learned the hard way that judges sometimes have no idea what they're doing. And the problem is they have almost unilateral power, particularly when they're dealing with situations in which the people who might push back don't have the funds or the resources to push back effectively. And even if they do push back, all the judge has to do is just rescind their previous ruling or something. You know, it's a blanket statement that I'm saying. But I had almost a very similar situation to this regarding age. So early in my career, I was working with a family. The parents were divorced. The mother brings in her 3 kids. And I'm working with the 3 kids and the mom. And immediately I am wanting to meet with the dad. And I get the phone number or something. And I'm reaching out to the dad, or the mom reached out to the dad. And the dad was refusing to come in. Because, you know, as a family therapist, I got to see everybody. And the issues weren't even blaming the dad. It was just, I think the mom was worried that the kids weren't processing the divorce well or something. It wasn't like this custody battle or yelling at the dad. It just seemed like a general worry for the kids. And so I figured that both parents would want to at least talk to me before and during the treatment of the three boys. But I reached out to the dad and he refused. Or the mom reached out to, and then I tried to reach out to the dad and he agreed. And so he came in and it was a one-off session that he said, I'll meet with you one time. And so he met with me one time. And then this is months into the treatment by this point. And I can't remember the exact details, but I get notified, probably by the mom, maybe via phone. She calls me and says that I can no longer work with the family, legally speaking. It's illegal. I think she might have said, it's illegal for me to bring my kids in to see you. And I said, what? Why? And she informed me that the ex-husband, after meeting me, had felt threatened or something, even though I was very kind. I didn't have anything against the dad. There was no reason. After this, I had a thing against the dad, but when I met with him, I wasn't blaming him for anything. I was just wanting to work with the family and wanting to talk with everybody. But I am informed about this, and then I said, why is it legal for you to bring the kids in? And she says, well, because he got a lawyer and went into court and told the judge that me, Kirk, that I was 17 years old and not qualified as a therapist, that I had no credentials, even though at the time I would have been 27, maybe older, and definitely had credentials. Had a master's degree, we didn't have licensure back then, but we had certification, and I was certified to practice as a psychotherapist. I also was hired by an agency. I was an employee. I wasn't that wasn't my private practice at the time. So because the former husband, the dad, went to the judge and just claimed that I was 17 and I wasn't qualified, the judge just took the dad's word for it and wrote some sort of injunction or order or something that actually prevented me from seeing the kids. And when I learned about that, I said, well, what? Don't courts of law require evidence? And isn't just saying something considered hearsay, or at the very least not enough to go off of to create havoc in people's lives? It's one thing for someone to believe someone. It's another thing to believe and then actually act on that, right? So that was one of the early experiences I had, among many, in which I realized that judges are human beings. And when you let human beings have full control, sometimes that results in an abuse of power. And it was very disappointing. I had run-ins with police in a similar way. Just to give you a small summary, I was working with a family, and the older brother, two brothers, and the older brother was accused of sexually abusing the younger brother. And it wasn't strong evidence. I think in the end, it was decided that it wasn't actually happening. And a police officer got involved, as they should, and was investigating and had talked to the family, had talked to each of the boys. And when he interrogated the older boy, my client, the accused, the police officer said, and I heard this all from the police officer later, by the way, that he told the older boy that he knew that he was sexually abusive of the younger brother. And the older brother's like, what are you talking about? I didn't do anything. No, that didn't happen. And the police officer said, I know you did it. And you know why I know? The kid's like, why would you know that? And the police officer says, because your therapist, Kirk Honda, told me that you told him that you sexually abused your younger brother. Obviously, that never happened, or I should say that never happened. It's not obvious, but that never happened. Not even anything in the ballpark of that. And so when I was going to work with, this is in-home therapy, so I go to the house and the older kid, won't talk to me. Big surprise, because he believes that I just straight up lied to a police officer to throw him in jail. And I'm asking around. The mom says, well, this happened. And I'm like, what? So I call the police and I get the supervisor, and I tell him the situation, and the supervisor is listening, and I lay it all out, and I say, so I would like this to be corrected. I would like the police officer to tell the kid that I did not say that, and that's not okay. You know, and I had other questions like, so it's just okay for police officers just to straight up lie to anyone, including children, including children's therapists? Like, you can just make shit up. You could just say, like, well, your father told me this, or your father abused me, or whatever. Like, you can just say whatever you want to in the course of trying to extract a confession or something. And apparently that is true. At least that's what I was told. And, or at least there's not a viable way of pushing back on that. And the supervisor's like, yep. And he's listening, and he's listening, and I'm thinking I'm gaining traction. And so I say, I want you to do something about it. And the supervisor says, well, there's nothing I can do, because that's just what it is to investigate these situations. Now, I would kind of understand if there was strong evidence that abuse was happening and you really needed to get that confession or some other, because it was just he said sort of situation, and you have so many data points pointing in the direction. You just really have to nail the perpetrator down, and so you fudge the truth to get them to confess or reveal something. I guess I would understand that, but this police officer basically had nothing to go off of. I remember the evidence being like really circumstantial, like a teacher was taking a guess or something like that. And the supervisor in the end just said, like, well, thanks for telling me, but nothing's going to happen. So see ya. And I just thought, wow, you know, when you give institutions and the people in those institutions complete power without any checks and balances, then you get what you get. Are all police officers like that? No. Are all judges like that? No. But the ones that are bad, who should be fired or at least sanctioned or retrained, they just get away with it, and they can abuse and harm. And so we have a situation where seemingly we have a judge who just made up this notion that the child is 22, when there's a lot of evidence, at least presented to us thus far, that the child was, at the very least, not 22. We still have the issue of the claim by Michael. He's the only one who's made this claim, I think. Or wait, did we know from other people that they also saw the pubic hair? Yeah, right. The mental health hospital said that they saw that and the breast development, and were speculating that the child was a lot older than the stated age. But we haven't heard from a medical professional about the possibilities here. We've just seen them do a Google search and that kind of stuff. So I'm guessing that at some point we're going to hear from a medical professional, and I'm just going to take a guess and say that they will claim that it is possible that she is the stated age. We also heard from the mom over the phone that the stated age was correct. Who knows? I don't know. So if you're ever in court, or you're ever having to go to court, like for a divorce or something, and your lawyer says, let's try to avoid going to court, trust their opinion. Not always, but it's not like it is in the movies. Not always. Sometimes it is, but it's not always. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's a new year, so of course it's time for New Year's resolutions. But often, those are just manifestations of internalized harmful voices that tell us we're not good enough. So instead of making a resolution to change something, let's recognize that we are already good enough. Now, most people think of therapy as a place for us to work on our problems, but there are several schools of thought within the field of psychotherapy that adamantly reject that paradigm, like narrative therapy and solution-focused. Instead, these clinicians help us focus on what we're already doing well. And by helping us do that, data shows that we often will gravitate towards more beneficial patterns. Well, one place you can find such therapists is on BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. So celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
We talked about that I went crazy. I had to, that I've been going crazy, that I had to go to the Community North Hospital, that I've been going crazy.
Okay.
Okay, so to catch you up, she is living in an apartment now because the parents, according to Michael, it was mainly Christine, but the parents wanted her out and wanted her to live in her own apartment. So I think they might be paying for everything, the parents, and she is living in her own place because the judge said she's 22. A neighbor said that she claimed, and Natalia claimed that she was 26, even though on my timeline, she would only be 23 or 24, but I don't know. And then if we consider that Natalia is not actually that old and is still a child, the neighbor called CPS, CPS got involved, and Natalia had reported to the CPS worker that the parents were only buying her food every couple months or something. The dad was claiming differently. The interactions between the dad and Natalia seem, I don't know, notable. It's just hard. It's hard to watch because someone is suffering, even if Natalia is lying, which is possible. She's not lying because she wakes up in the morning, in all likelihood. She's not lying because she wakes up in the morning and says, I just want to manipulate everybody. She's lying out of deep trauma and confusion and developmental issues related to attachment, disruption, and injury that can result in chronic lying, pathological lying. So it's hard to watch. Even if I believe the dad, which we can't know, then what we see is someone who was abandoned and thrown away like trash, like the way the biological mother said on the phone, or was it the aunt? The aunt that said this? Yeah, the aunt. Anyway, it's hard to watch. But then we hear that she went into another hospital, a different hospital, seemingly recently to this time span, so 2013-ish. And I think we're about to read something that she wrote while she was in that. She said she went crazy, but I could see that looking like a lot of different things. I could see the trauma, the abandonment, the frustration. There's also a lot of sympathy you have for someone that has trouble walking. She has maybe trouble taking care of herself. She certainly isn't old enough to have learned how to do those things, even if she were in her mid-20s, given her history, right? To just have the situation where she's abandoned. I am doing this because I'm trying to intimidate mom and dad, and I am trying to frame them by making my parents look mean. Okay, so it's hard to know if this is accurate. It's possible she is being mistreated and she is being pressured to write this or just wants to get people off her back. Yeah, as a therapist in the early part of my career, I would work with people who were both victims of abuse or being mistreated, and they would lie, sometimes to cover it up. We understand that, right? That victims will sometimes lie because they calculate, whether it's accurate or not, that it's better for them to just say what the perpetrator wants them to say so that they'll be abused less or something. So it's hard to know. But it's also completely possible, given at least the allegations against Natalia, that she was absolutely lying and that something happened in the hospital that helped her to admit this or something.
This handwritten letter. Natalia is recanting all of these things she had said about Christine in the past, saying, I made them up to make my mom and dad look really bad. Is it possible that this is actually dictated by Christine so that DCS would get off her back?
Oh, so she's claiming that maybe Christine dictated it, so the letter was written not when she was in the hospital. I don't know. At any rate, I wonder if this is popular because there's so many twists and turns, and this is what it's like when you work for cases like this. You gather information, you take guesses, and it might seem as though a clinician would need to know the answer to this. It'd be nice, but it's not necessary, because what I would do, and I'm guessing a lot of other therapists would as well, is I do what I can to just treat the issues in a diplomatic way as if everyone's telling the truth. Does Natalia lie sometimes? It's probable. So I would work on that. I wouldn't just repeat all the allegations and say I believe them, but I might even say to someone in Natalia's shoes, look, you're telling me that you don't lie very often. Your parents are saying you lie all the time. I don't know what the truth is, and frankly, it doesn't really matter. But, for the sake of this session, How about we just talk about truth and about lying and about reasons for lying? Like, I'll tell you, for me, the reasons why I might lie in my past is because of this, this, and this. Do you find that you might lie in those situations as well? Just generally talking about it, because everyone can have a conversation like that. And if she did have a problem with lying, then I would hope that it would help. With the parents, I would say, look, you're telling me that you didn't do anything wrong. Other people are saying otherwise. So regardless, though, let's just talk about parenting. Let's talk about what you've learned about parenting. And I can talk about things that I've learned about how to parent difficult children. Now, I'm not saying that I know that Natalia is difficult. I'm just saying that, she's not the easiest kid to parent, right? That's what you're saying. I don't know to what degree, because I'm not there. But let's talk about parenting. I might bring them all together and say, let's talk about how to bond and how to work out conflict, even though I don't know who is to blame. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Tune in next time when I continue watching. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.